Hi, I'm Robert Tolpe, and today I'm talking about Boston Dynamics, a robotics company that is developing some of the most advanced machines ever created. The company's success is concerning, as not only has it received intense funding from the US military, but their quadruped robots have been used by police departments already, responding to home invasions and monitoring homeless populations. Despite pushback, it appears that the unstoppable force of automation is creeping its way into some of the most oppressive institutions in our nation. So let's talk about that, shall we? Boston Dynamics was founded in 1992 by an MIT professor named Mark Raybert. Raybert was a pioneer in legged robots. Back when he was at Carnegie Mellon in the 80s, he founded the Leg Lab, which made clumsy little robots that hopped and pranced around the room, nothing too scary. But 41 years later, Raybert's robots can climb over difficult terrain, run faster than Usain Bolt, and even perform backflips and parkour. How did these robots become so advanced in only a couple of decades? The answer is funding, and lots of it, which for a long time came from a US government agency called DARPA, or the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. According to their website, they helped develop the icons of modern civilian society, like the internet and GPS. They fail to mention that they also invented Agent Orange and drones. Every year, they pour billions of dollars into emerging defense technologies and studies, including research into how to manipulate users on social media platforms like Twitter and how to mine our data. In the early 2010s, they were heavily interested in Boston Dynamics quadruped robots. They thought that their robot called Big Dog could serve as a pack mule on the battlefield, walking alongside troops, carrying heavy equipment. While the concept was never fully realized, DARPA provided the millions in funding that Boston Dynamics needed to subsist on until Google's parent company Alphabet finally bought it in 2013. Fattened by the cash flow of Fortune 500 companies, Boston Dynamics became the industry leader in the production of quadruped robots, and by 2020, they had a commercial product available for sale. Big Dog's distant cousin, called Spot, and one of the company's first customers was the New York City Police Department.
It's been a rough year for the NYPD. Crime is reaching record levels in the city, and today, the newest bot in blue was sent out to its first crime scene.
That thing is creepy.
So we went from a robot developed to help infantry and combat to an iteration of the same robot being used in residential neighborhoods by police. I would say I'm surprised, but I'm not, because the police have a long history of militarization dating back to the 1930s, when local police departments began to use automatic weapons and armored cars, technology that was developed for the First World War. During the 60s, President Lyndon B. Johnson declared what he called a war on crime. To fight this war, the Law Enforcement Assistance Act was passed so that the federal government could assist local police departments in militarization. A grant-making agency was formed within the Department of Justice. Corrected for inflation, this program received nearly $250 million in funding, with which they purchased a literal arsenal of tanks, gas masks, bulletproof vests, and helicopters for police departments. Most of this equipment was fresh off the battlefields of Vietnam. It's also no secret that these new programs that were part of the war on crime were wildly anti-black. The communities that were targeted by these militarized mass surveillance programs designed to make the streets safer were black communities. This resulted in many casualties and mass incarceration of black people. For instance, Detroit's STRESS program resulted in more than 15 casualties, including mostly unarmed black people, in just 2 years during the 1970s. The decades after the war on crime's heyday saw very little improvement. By the time Obama was in office, the government was still handing out military surplus goodie bags as if local police departments were trick-or-treaters and every day was Halloween. This equipment was used in Ferguson and the mass protests of 2020, where innumerable civilians were injured by the weapons used against them by riot control officers. Despite public outcry, protests were still met with militaristic force by police, whether they were peaceful or not. With all this in mind, I don't think giving officers another toy to play with, even if it's just a yellow robotic dog, is moving in the right direction, especially considering it's not just a robotic pet. Spot, as unassuming as it looks, is equipped with an array of scanners and sensors that happen to be perfect for surveillance. Picture a peaceful protest against some horrible law restricting people's freedoms. A group of quadruped robots are deployed, each with cameras hypothetically armed with facial recognition technology. Every protester returns home safely, only to be arrested and intimidated with bogus charges against them in order to silence them. Their pictures were taken by Spot and ran through a police database for names and addresses. The police even use tools that scrape social media for images of the suspects if they can't be found in their database. I'm sure you're beginning to see the problems with this. Not only is it an immoral and egregious invasion of privacy, but it's again biased against people of color. Facial recognition boasts accuracy rates higher than 90% on average, but they are up to 35% less accurate when attempting to recognize people of color. This was discovered in a study conducted by MIT in conjunction with Microsoft, indicating that darker-skinned black women are most affected by errors in facial recognition software. If you think the use of this technology is purely hypothetical, it isn't. This technology is already being used by more than just police departments. This year, a 14-year-old black girl was denied entry to a local skating rink because their facial recognition technology determined she was a different girl, allegedly involved in a fight. Our society is so biased that we're unintentionally training our computer programs to be prejudiced. Racial profiling is being automated and implemented on a scale larger than we've ever seen before, and it's not just facial recognition that's the problem. Biases can be found in nearly every algorithm we have dealing with people, and unfortunately, many of these algorithms are used in the justice system. The organization ProPublica discovered that a computer program was being used to give a risk assessment of whether or not someone would commit another crime after being released from prison. It gave a score of how likely it would be for a convict in question to reoffend. Their research uncovered that the algorithm erroneously labeled black convicts as possible future offenders at nearly twice the rate of white convicts. As our world becomes progressively more automated, more and more of these biased algorithms will be used instead of relying on humans to do certain tasks. Physical work will be automated as well. I imagine even many human police officers will be replaced by humanoid robots. Robots, like Atlas, created by Boston Dynamics. Just like Spot, it was developed under DARPA's supervision. It can run fast, jump over obstacles, and do backflips. It weighs nearly 200 pounds, and it's pretty easy to imagine it catching up to a suspect and tackling them. Imagine robots like Atlas being programmed with an algorithm designed to detect suspicious and illegal behavior. Judging from algorithms that have attempted to do this in the past, said algorithm would no doubt be biased against black people. These robots would be armed to the nines, just like a human police officer, of course. And just like a human police officer, it would do the same horrible things with those weapons if its algorithms incorrectly determined a man reaching into his pocket was reaching for a weapon. I'm glad to see that I mostly don't have to tell people that what is happening is very dangerous. Science nonfiction shows like Black Mirror have showed us what could happen if we let these things loose on the streets. People are absolutely terrified of these robots, and they should be. If you're wondering why Boston Dynamics has a YouTube channel, it's because they're trying to make these machines, which are quickly turning our world into a hellscape, seem cute. These viral videos desensitize us to the robots that will be on every street corner stopping and frisking people by the end of the decade. Their videos are also free advertising. They demonstrate the integrity of their products and that they're ready for practical applications in the real world. Spot is already out of the lab and working on the ground. Despite massive opposition in New York City against the use of these robots, which ended in the termination of the NYPD's lease with Boston Dynamics, other police departments are entertaining the idea of getting their very own Spot to use, and some already have ones on active duty. The Honolulu Police Department has deployed them to scan homeless people for signs of fever, and the Massachusetts State Police has been eyeing the robots for police use since 2019. Because robots are so useful in police work, their rollout nationwide in some capacity will be inevitable. Legislation needs to be put in place swiftly in order to prevent people from getting harmed. Laws banning the use of facial recognition technology and limiting the use of robots in residential areas will hopefully become the new norm as civilians push for privacy and safety in their neighborhoods. And you, dear viewer, can do your part to help. You can start by going to banfacialrecognition.com, which will help you contact your lawmakers and get the ball rolling. With collective action, we can make our own future instead of sitting idly by as corporations and the government create a dystopian one for us. Anyways, I'm Robert Tolpe, and if you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and maybe even check out my Patreon if you'd like to support the channel, and I hope you have a great week. Bye bye.